the Bangers, and this is our final video project for our musical instrumentation design class. When we first started this class, we had to figure out what instrument we wanted to redesign. We started with trying out different instruments in the percussion family, since this is where we wanted to pull our instrument from. We ended up deciding on the beautiful marimba. Then we had to do our research for this lovely instrument.
The rich history of the marimba started out as a complement to community rituals within African tribes before the 15th century. The marimba's first form was simply a wooden plank of arbitrary length laid across a hole dug in the ground. The plank would resonate upon being struck, and the hole would act as a resonator, amplifying the sound. The slave trade facilitated the spread of the marimba to South America in the 15th century, where the diatonic scale was discovered. This gave rise to a more familiar form of the marimba, with discrete notes but with gourds as resonators. The Mayan civilization used the marimba extensively in the 16th century, helping to popularize the instrument. The marimba reached North America by the 20th century, where two craftsmen named J.C. Deegan and U.G. Leedy are contributed with producing the modern form of the marimba. The 1930 World Fair, held in Chicago, gave the marimba international exposure, leading to its status as a common instrument in symphony orchestra.
A marimba is made of 4 parts: the keys, resonator tubes, tensioning strings, and frame. The frame is commonly made of steel and is used to just support the remaining components. The keys, often made of rosewood, a rare wood from Africa, and then the resonator tubes are made of aluminum, but can also be found in copper. It is just less common as that is a heavier material. The final component is the tensioning strings. These are what hold the marimba keys in place, as well as elevate them off the frame so that they can resonate to their fullest potential and create that sound that we all know and love.
Throughout the history of the marimba, its construction has changed and evolved into what we know today as the grand concert marimba. From early marimbas with gourd resonators and local wood, to modern metal resonators and rare rosewood, the finer details have become more refined with time. However, the construction and manufacturing steps have stayed relatively constant to preserve the idea of what a marimba is. For our marimba construction, we opted for a flat frame without resonators, which mimics very early marimbas. This design decision comes from a desire to increase portability for concert or educational travel.
Our team focused on improving sustainability, specifically the keys that the notes are made from. As the marimba originally used rosewood, we decided to explore multiple options for alternative materials. We propose using different woods that are more sustainable, a wood treated with resin or stain to improve on stiffness, using 3D printing technology to produce keys from PLA plastic, and an epoxy resin key formed from a water-soluble mold. As we explore different options for marimba keys, we would integrate different types into our final instrument. The first type of key we started to construct was made from PLA plastic. To start, a 3D model was created of a marimba key with measurements inspired by a real rosewood marimba. The result of this initial design produced a bar that resonated at a much lower frequency than was targeted. After some research, this was not surprising, as PLA has a lower stiffness than wood, a property that is directionally proportional to frequency. A second design was attempted with modifications made to length, thickness, and curvature of the undercut. This bar again resonated at too low a frequency. On our third attempt, we created a design that could be scaled easily for every note in the target octave and was correctly sized to reach these notes. With the design finalized, all 13 bars were printed with incremental increases in length for each note. After printing, the bars were tuned by either removing material from the middle thickness to lower the pitch, or material was removed from the ends to raise the pitch. This process was repeated for all 13 bars until a well-tuned octave was produced. As we transitioned into our epoxy resin bar, we were able to repurpose the 3D model by creating a negative from this design. This creates a 3D printed mold that we could then pour epoxy resin into. After hardening, the mold and all could be placed in water, which dissolved as it was made from PVA, a water-soluble filament. During testing, it produced no discernible note at all, proving epoxy resin is not a viable alternative for a marimba key. We suspect this variety of epoxy resin has a stiffness much higher than PLA, leading to a frequency being produced that is not a common note. Further analysis was done on the PLA bars through a finite element analysis study in SOLIDWORKS. Using this program, we inputted the 3D model of the PLA marimba bars, to simulate its resonating frequency, as well as any harmonics present. In addition to outputting the frequencies present, the physical deformation of the marimba bars for each harmonic is also shown. Using this program, we could roughly estimate at what frequency our marimba bars would resonate at, as well as validate our geometry.
To create the wooden keys, we had to have wood, so we made a group trip to Home Depot and visited the bargain bin to get some wood that we could test with. After getting woodshop certified, we started the tester keys to determine what shape we wanted on the bottom of the keys. After finding a super cool spreadsheet with bar dimensions and deciding that we liked the curved structure better, we set off on creating the keys. We then went back to Home Depot and bought better wood. Then we went back to the wood shop, where we joined the wood before using the table saw to make sure that the wood was the right width. We then used the chop saw, which you are seeing now, to get the bars to be the right lengths based on the spreadsheet we found earlier. We luckily did not mess up any of these lengths. Then, once we had our very nice and pretty rectangles, we took them over to this drill press that you're seeing and drilled the holes which the string will eventually go through to hold the pieces in the frame. Then Brian went through the painstaking process of measuring the curvature of the keys which we intended to make and then drawing said curve on each bar individually. After the curve was completely drawn, it was taken to the bandsaw to cut out the curve. Since our curves were hand-drawn, we had to do a lot of work after the key was made to get it to the right tone. The frame ended up being very simple to put together, just using some 2x4s and screwing them together, making sure they were the right length to hold all of our keys. We then attached some 3D printed rope guides to help keep the micro paracord that we planned to use in place, which would help elevate our keys to help with our resonance. Once all of the keys were tuned and the frame was built, we started putting together the entire marimba. As you can see, it's a very precise process that you have to go to string up all of the keys, making sure they're in the right order and that the string is very taut.
In testing our marimba bars, we were pleasantly surprised with the resonance of our more sustainable bars. While we expected a dull, hollow sound from the less dense wood, to our ears, only some of our keys had that issue. The cedar keys, specifically, sounded full and sustained, which confirms our research that cedar is a suitable material that is more sustainable and commercially available. We did not find a way to effectively treat our wood with an oil or epoxy-based solution, but with the performance of many of our keys, it seemed unnecessary. Quantitatively, when we ran our LabVIEW spectrum analyzer, the wood and PLA bars had similar peaks to our reference data from the Grand Concert Marimba. The magnitude of the higher harmonic frequencies were diminished, though this is likely due to the unavoidable lower density of all our materials. However, since we maintained the original shape of the marimba keys, the natural stronger harmonics were still present, validating our methodology.
Guess the song!